Hello and welcome back to Good Sport Reviews. Eddie Howe has to stay at Newcastle United. The club needs to learn from past mistakes and look to the future, not the past. So I'm just going to give my thoughts on it today. Eddie Howe's come under a lot of media scrutiny over the past few days because his side has suffered another defeat. The Man City defeat showed grit for the first part of the match and then a capitulation of heads towards the end. They really did, for all intents and purposes, bottle it. 2 late goals against Man City from a Kevin De Bruyne who's just come back from a massive injury, and it's 1 win in 7. And that 1 win was against Sunderland in the FA Cup. It's not looking good for Newcastle. We all know this. They really are in a bit of a regression season. Last year they ran before they could walk. They overachieved, reached the Carabao Cup final, Champions League spot, went into the greatest competition in football, and this season they're coming back down to earth a bit. Injuries, suspensions, youth inability to play has really hampered their season. They've suffered defeats to the likes of Everton, Luton, Brighton, Nottingham Forest, with Chris Wood, a former Newcastle player, scoring a hat-trick against them in that match at St James's Park. At points it's been humiliating, and while there are Newcastle fans who want to stick with Eddie Howe, there are also Newcastle fans who want Eddie Howe gone. I'm giving my thoughts as to why the latter, is the wrong way of doing things. I've got on the screen a few things. I've got statistics, I've got Eddie Howe's win percentage, a bunch of other things. And I know stats can be misleading. I understand that there's something that people just use now as a sort of way of getting the most out of football off the pitch. But they can shine some light. So we've got here the win percentage of Newcastle managers. Now, Chris Hughton has a 59.38 win percentage, which is superb from the Championship. Eddie Howe has managed 84 games at Newcastle. He's won 43 and he's got a 51.19 win percentage. You look at the previous managers before that, the likes of Steve Bruce, Rafa Benitez, fantastic, no doubt about it. But Eddie Howe, statistically, has been the better manager in this regard. Steve McLaren, awful. John Carver, awful. Alan Pardew had his moments, but he definitely faded towards the end. Eddie Howe has been the best manager the club have employed since Benitez, but before that, you're talking a long time ago. There's no one on that list that really shines out and makes you think, absolutely amazing. Maybe Bobby Robson is the best manager. So Eddie Howe is the best manager since Bobby Robson. That was 2004 when he left the club. That's 19 years or 18 years even of instability in the managerial role. The club now, with this new ownership, have a future to build towards. They have a stable financial situation where they can bring in whoever they want and say, look, we're going to build this team slowly but surely and eventually get to where we want to be, which is the Premier League title. And Eddie Howe is the man to do that, for the simple fact of Bournemouth. It's a different size club. Bournemouth are a club that were just trying to avoid relegation season after season with little to no funding, but they did it because Eddie Howe got them playing a particular way of football. I remember they beat us 4-3. They beat Chelsea. They beat Man United. They gave City some good games. Eddie Howe can get a side playing good football, and he's done that with Newcastle since coming into the side. Aggressive, never say die, pressing football, and that's what Newcastle have been doing. This season, injuries have prevented them from doing that, so therefore there's a drop-off. They have suffered some terrible injuries, as you can see here. Harvey Barnes has been out since September. Joe Linton's been getting continuously injured. He's due back in May. Jacob Murphy out since October. Elliot Anderson out since October. Matt Targett, Joe Willock, Nick Pope, Callum Wilson, Timo Livramento. Alexander Isak's been out at some point. Tonali is banned. These are things that need to be considered because Manchester United fans will say injuries are hampering our season. Tottenham, injuries hampering their season. So why is it that Newcastle's injuries aren't hampering their season when it's a squad that's threadbare to begin with and has players in that team who are championship quality, like Matt Ritchie? Jamal Lascelles has been brilliant, but yeah, he's again championship quality player. You've signed players like Lewis Hall, who isn't getting in the team. Tonali obviously suffered the betting ban. There's a lot of things going on behind the scenes that are affecting the football, and injuries are a big part of that. Without your best players, without the likes of Nick Pope, who's your starting goalkeeper, Callum Wilson, who's one of your starting attackers, Joe Willock, who's a starting midfielder, Harvey Barnes, who was brought in to be a starting winger, and the likes of Almiron up front, no team is going to do fantastic in the league with that as the case. It needs to be considered that injuries are having a massive impact on Newcastle's season, and it's something which has affected their form. If we go into the Premier League table at the moment, they're currently 10th, and of that, they've won one in their last 4 defeats in a row, and their next match is against Aston Villa. It's not getting easier for them. It needs to be said that, yes, there have been dreadful performances. There's no excuse for the Luton defeat. There's no excuse for the Everton defeat. There's no excuses for the Nottingham Forest defeat, other than maybe the new bounce of Nuno. Newcastle thrive on energy. That's what they want to play. That's what they want to present on the pitch. And they can't do that because they don't have the personnel to do it. And now it's coming out that FFP is restricting what they can and can't buy. And that might be the party line. That just might be, look, it's us against the world, etc., etc. But it still needs to play a factor. Clubs in the past, not naming names, have been took over. Been able to buy whoever they want. Been able to sign world-class players straight away with no remorse, no hesitation. Newcastle are restricted, and it's only been one summer window. Now, what does this mean for the club going forward? Is Eddie Howe the man to do it? Yes, because the Premier League now is about projects, long-term projects, prosperous things that are going to develop over time and turn into something brilliant. Arteta's doing it at Arsenal. Klopp did it at Liverpool. Pep did it at City, debatably. Eddie Howe was doing it at Bournemouth. And it worked up until the last season of Bournemouth when they did get relegated because injuries and the quality in the league at that point was just far too good. Brighton are doing it currently at the moment. Crystal Palace tried doing it with Patrick Vieira. It just didn't work. Burnley with Vincent Kompany. All clubs now are looking for a long-term project. If Newcastle were to sack Eddie Howe for Jose Mourinho, I think it would be an embarrassment of the club because Mourinho is not a progressive manager. Mourinho is someone who will come in and be like a shot of adrenaline. He'll get the club going, boom, boom, energy, play. They might win a trophy. They might win a cup. But how many times is Mourinho going to get to go to a team and destroy it from the inside before people go, we don't want Mourinho? Chelsea, the first time he got sacked, that was a disgrace. But then his second time at Chelsea started to go very toxic, very quick. Manchester United, the fans were crying out for Mourinho to be sacked because he was not the man to do it. He was rotting the foundations of the club from the dressing room outwards. He was poisoning that dressing room. Tottenham, the same thing there. Roma seemed to have been different, but he's left the club in 7th place and he's now been sacked. Going to Newcastle, a club which has all this positive energy at the moment, all this happy atmosphere, bringing someone in like Mourinho is detrimental to what they're trying to build. And for Newcastle, the best thing they can do is stick with Eddie Howe. They need to understand that last season, they went miles above where they should have been. Avoiding relegation has been Newcastle's story. If they can finish mid-table, that's not a bad season. With the injuries they've got, they've still got players in there who need to leave. They still need to invest in more players coming in. This mid-table finish in a season could be beneficial. No Europe next season to hamper them. More players can be brought into the club. The dead wood can be sold and progress. And then next season, push for European places or slightly higher up the table. Slowly build your way up rather than trying to get there as quick as you can and then burning out before you can actually make a real impact. Eddie Howe has proven he is a long-term solution. He was at Bournemouth for years and it worked. Newcastle need a long-term manager who understands the vision of the club, who understands the players he wants, because a lot of those players in that team are not Jose Mourinho players, and losing them will then mean you'll have to bring in other players, which you can't do because of restrictions, unless the players you're selling are Alexander Isak, Bruno Guimaraes, Tonali when he comes back from his ban, Sven Botman, Kieran Trippier, who's already linked with a move away. Mourinho will not take a lot of these players because he expects better. Eddie Howe works with what he has and makes it work. And yeah, this season, at times, definitely it's been poor, but it's not dreadful. I think they would rather be mid-table than relegation fodder. And they're not that. So we're going to have to really see where they go from this. Just wanted to give my quick thoughts on this because it's something that's really been on my mind, to be honest, over the past few days. A lot of people saying Eddie Howe out, Eddie Howe in. Just wanted to give my thoughts on it. If you are new around here, please make sure to hit the like and subscribe buttons, and I will see you in the next video. Thank you very much.